Chapter 121. One day after leaving the demi-human village, we arrived at Lajarn, the city of war, on the way to our next destination, Alfheim. Oh, it's really like a city from an RPG. After arriving in Lajarn, I was a little touched now. What entered my field of vision was the most archetypal cityscape of an RPG. The roofs of the buildings on both sides of the cobblestone street were uniformly red, while the walls were either yellow or white. Flowers adorned the window sills, giving off a gorgeous atmosphere that was contrary to its stern name, the Warrior City. It was neither surrounded by a huge lake nor stuck to the side of a mountain. It was neither shrouded in perpetual night nor a capital city that was a mobile golem itself. It certainly wasn't a collection of tents on a GRA.S. land. This was the CLA.S. sick fantasy cityscape. There were carriages on the main street and many people were coming and going. Their outfits were also typical of RPGs. They weren't uncles in work clothes with faces that looked alike nor angels wearing cloaks. The women wore APR.O.NS over blouses and skirts, similar to the German dirndl in design. The men wore leather pants with suspenders, many of which were similar to the German lederhosen. The emphasis on durability and dirt resistance would imply heavy work. In this world where the culture was less developed than on Earth, it was unsurprising that hard labor was involved in the majority of jobs instead of desk work. Furthermore, there were adventurers and mercenaries, who were obviously not common people, walking around with swords. This was good. The fantasy feel was amazing. Now, is it okay to send you this far? Oh, thank you, Rapaz. Gantz answered my question cheerfully. Even though he knew my ident.I.tie, he still did not change his attitude towards me. He was still a nice uncle. On the other hand, the tiger and the elf Niisan still looked at me with anxiety. They were rather pitiful. In the hero's party, there were 3 types of attitudes towards me: friendly, indifferent, and fearful. Sei, Gantz, and Jean were the former, while Cruz, the tiger, and the cat were the latter. The gorilla was probably indifferent, neither particularly fearful nor friendly. I needed to make a correction. It wasn't just 3 people who were frightened of me. There were 4 people, including the one who joined the hero's party yesterday and just got off Suzuki. Golems are amazing. To think that we'd reached the national border so quickly. What came down was a suspicious person who shrouded his entire body with white loose clothes, wore a turban on his head, and even covered his face with a cloth. Of course, we knew why he was dressed in this manner. His ident.I.tie was the male Spiderkin who served as one of the subordinates of Leon. I didn't know the details, but it seemed that when Scorpius tried to kill him, the youth Sei intervened and saved his life. And so, the honorable male Spiderkin offered to accompany him on his journey out of Grat.I.tude. This was the result of the youth Sei's moral character. But even so, you guys don't look like a hero's party at all. I'm aware of that. My words caused Sei to droop his shoulders, but it couldn't be helped. There were adventurers, a mercenary, and even a tiger, a gorilla, a cat, a dog, and a spider. What a chaotic group. It seemed the only serious people were the youth Sei and Cruz. What will Rapaz-san and the others do now? We'll take a short tour in this city, then head over to Alfheim. Originally, I intended to go directly to Alfheim, but there had been some changes. We'd take a stroll through this city for a little while. This was the most RPG-like city since I came to this world. It would be a pity to just leave without doing anything. There was no urgent matter right now anyway, so it wasn't a bad idea to spend some time socializing with friends. Besides, it might help Sagittarius to take his mind off things. Libra, find the best inn in this city. Understood. There was a lot of money left. I had made a lot of money from selling the orc meat that I acquired at the start through Dina, as well as the swords and spears that I made casually. Despite this, they still met the professional standards in the current era. Furthermore, since we were traveling on Tanaka, there was no transportation cost. And so we only ended up ACCU.mulating funds. By the way, Sei, I have something for you. I said and snapped my fingers. Then, as if he was waiting for the cue, Agakero stood beside me and handed me a package. Well, it wasn't actually anything important. It was just something I made casually during the journey, but it should still be of a better quality than what was generally available. A katana was revealed after the package was unwrapped. The katana used by the youth SEI had been broken by Scorpius, so this was a kind of compensation. The materials used were Mizar steel and the mana crystals that Ares picked up from somewhere. This gave the weapon a decent attack power along with a magic support function, which was better than having nothing. In addition, I added a bit of my mana into the crystals, so low-tier sun attribute arcane magic could be activated without any cost. Well, even if I said this, it was just a poorly made sword, but it was just the right match for low-level individuals. This is a replacement for the katana that was broken by Scorpius. Think of it as a farewell gift. Is that okay? As long as we have money, we can just buy weapons here, it's fine. It was my subordinate who broke it, so it's my responsibility. I handed the katana over to the youth SEI and then I realized that I didn't name the sword. Even though it was fine for it to be nameless, it would still be better for it to have a name. Its name, since it's a katana, AJ.A. Payne's name will be more appropriate. Okay, let's call this katana Cowan. Cowan, a phenomenon in which the sun's gases were blown upwards, also called a solar prominence. The name was somewhat pretentious, but a little exaggeration for a weapon name seemed fitting. Furthermore, it was the weapon of the hero, so a slightly fanciful name would be better. Looking at the youth SEI who received the katana with trepidation, Gantz laughed and said, "You struck gold. Congratulations. I wonder how many millions a weapon made by Ruppes Moffel is worth." It's probably comparable to my Lucifer Blade Ecthelion Omega. Lucifer Blade Ecthelion Omega? Wasn't that the super weak weapon I made while I was messing around? Its equipment effect merely added plus 150 to the attack power without any add-on effects. It was left behind in the royal tomb and now Jean was using it as if it was a really powerful sword. Sorry, Jean, but it was actually super weak. Well then, we should get going. I somehow felt it was becoming unbearable and quickly left the spot. How should I explain this? It was like watching an adult acting inappropriately for his age while buying a sword-shaped key holder at a souvenir shop. Moreover, the key holder was made by me. While listening to the footsteps of my comrades who followed behind, I was thinking of making something for Jean next time. Gemini https://handofvecna.blogspot.com. Watching the backs of Ruppes and her followers moving away, SEI sighed lightly. The purpose of meeting with Ruppes was to determine the paths and choices available to him and understand her personality and objectives. Although it became complicated due to the issue with the demi-humans, he somehow managed to complete it without any problem. All he had to do now was to activate and release the golem he received from Migraz. However, he still did not have an answer. He had already concluded that Ruppes was not a villain. She wasn't a dangerous person like the world portrayed her to be. So at one point, he almost concluded that they should make an alliance. However, her subordinates were different. Scorpius and Agakeros were fine if Ruppes was keeping them under control, but if she wasn't, they could potentially bare their fangs at the humanoids. Yes, Ruppes herself wasn't the only thing that the people feared in the past. The tyrannical 12 stars, who could become devilish beings at her whims, were also feared. That was why he pondered and became confused. Is this really correct? Is the path I'm choosing right now really the correct one? If it turned out to be the wrong choice, in that moment, he recalled Ruppes using solar flare in his mind. He then imagined a scene where she used that power against the humanoids, a scene where she destroyed Midgard. Overwhelming power was enough to incite fear on its own. SEI, what's wrong? You look pale. No, I'm fine. He could empathize with the people in the past. That was certainly scary, way too scary. When he first came to this world and heard about the Demon King and Ruppes, he only thought of it all as a typical fantasy development. He imagined they were as powerful as the typical Demon King of RPGs. But it was different. They weren't even in the same dimension. If she wanted to, she could destroy this world at any time. There was too much power concentrated in one individual. Furthermore, she commanded the organization called the Tyrannical 12 Stars. As a result, if one chose the wrong way to deal with Rupas, in the worst-case scenario, one could become responsible for the destruction of the world. This fact was more frightening than anything else. And anyway, why don't we find an inn? A lot of things have happened. I think it's better to take it slow today. That's true. Everyone is pretty tired. Let's take a break here. As SEI talked to Cruz about accommodations, he had a discomforting feeling. Their journey was made possible by the support of a ranger team from behind the scenes. For example, food procurement and information gathering of cities were performed by them. This included making arrangements for accommodations. When they arrived at a city, one of the rangers would normally come and inform them about the accommodations. However, N.O. Body came today. Cruz-san. Could it be that the entire ranger team was left behind in Dropnir? When SEI mentioned it, Cruz seemed to notice it as well. His face turned pale as he checked to see if there were any rangers nearby, but of course, there weren't any. This was because SEI and the others were traveling on Suzuki after they met Rupas. It was moving at more than 60 kilometers per hour. It wasn't a speed at which humans could run and catch up. No, the people of this world might be able to catch up if they were of exceptional levels, but it was impossible for the ranger team. Disregarding any momentary burst of speed, they couldn't move at the same speed as Suzuki over such a long distance all the way from Dropnir. They were certainly remarkable, but they weren't exceptional. And anyway, let's find an inn for the time being. They may unexpectedly catch up if we wait for a bit. Cruz looked into the distance and decided to prioritize accommodations. He wasn't trying to escape from reality. Neither was he looking away out of guilt for messing up. They said through a lively street and headed towards an inn that caught their eyes. Its exterior wasn't bad. In addition, it was facing the main street and had a sense of cleanliness. Naturally, the price would be higher than normal, but this was the hero's party backed by a king, so they had sufficient money. Moreover, the acquisition of the elixir in Dropnir resulted in them having an excess of money. It was not a good idea to stay at a cheap inn and have one's luggage stolen by thugs. The price of an inn was not just about the quality of its facilities. Cheap inns should be avoided if only to buy one's safety. Naturally, cheap inns would attract people who could only pay so much for such facilities, thus such people would often steal other customers' luggage. In the worst-case scenario, even the innkeeper might aim for the customer's luggage. SEI paid at the counter to receive the key and headed for the designated room. I'm really tired today. Let's take a long break. So he thought, but when he used the key to unlock the room, the door of the next room opened. And he met Rupas, who just came out of the other room. Chapter 122. A wild thug appeared. Author, Firehead, Translator, Hand of Vecna Editors, 2 more free thoughts, TPSTT, Key Raw Chapter 122. Why is this happening? Depressed, SEI sighed as he walked down the main street. I don't know what kind of coincidence is it to stay at an inn and just happen to have an overlord as a neighbor. Is this a joke? Moreover, she is currently playing 7 bridge using playing cards with Gantz and Jean. I'm not merely playing the straight man here. Why are there playing cards in this other world? Why is it 7 bridge? How does she even know the rules? Well, the possibility of having playing cards in this world wasn't zero. The world of Midgard was distorted as if it was the remnant of a story involving a fantastical or fictional Earth. However, when I checked with Cruz, he confirmed that there was no such thing as playing cards in this world. At least, the game didn't exist back when Cruz was born. In that case, there was only one possibility. It was evident that Rupas knew about Earth. Furthermore, it wasn't a vague understanding that such a world existed. If she knew of the games and vehicles on Earth so well, it would imply that she had actually seen them before. But she had been born and raised in Midgard and should have been sealed away for the last 200 years. Could it be that she was on Earth when she was sealed away? Ridiculous. That's impossible. No way, the more I think about it, the more I don't understand. After scratching his head, Sei ceased thinking about it for now. Then, he saw the building he wanted to go to and headed over there. He walked out of the inn alone to have a change of pace and to familiarize himself with his new katana. He had heard from Cruz that there was a training center in this city. For a fee, it provided a place to train as well as simulated battles against golems made by alchemists. It was a facility that was appreciated by those who frequently found themselves in battle. Indeed, in a world where battles were a daily occurrence, there would definitely be a demand for such facilities. After all, there were adventurers who had no combat experience at all as well as amateurs who had no other options but to fight. For these people, such a facility was essential. Furthermore, there were many instruction manuals that were forbidden from being taken out of the facility. People could train themselves using these manuals to learn how to use various weapons. For Sei, this was a very fortunate situation. After all, his weapon was a katana and not a regular sword. In other words, N.O.Body and his party knew how to use it properly and so they couldn't teach him. As a mercenary, Gantz could use many different weapons, but the weapons he was most proficient with were axes, followed by great swords, and then blunt weapons. In other words, he was good with weapons that utilized brute force. Regarding katanas, he said, it's a bit too delicate for me. The female knight was more proficient with the great sword. For Jean, it was the long sword, while for the tiger, it was the great sword as well. Kinko used a rapier, so it was the most similar to Sei's weapon, but a rapier and a katana were still completely different. That was why N.O.Body could teach Sei how to use a katana. Since he had not yet learned proper swordsman's.H.I+P, he could only come here. He wanted to take the opportunity to actively learn what he could. The training center was already nearby, but Sei stopped his feet. He heard the sounds of an argument from within an alley. Although Lejarn was a reasonably safe city, Cruz still advised him not to enter the back alleys. Places away from the main streets were hangouts for vagrants. One would never know what kinds of dangerous people lurked there. Therefore, if it were the usual sounds of an argument, Sei would have ignored it and headed towards the training center. If it was just thugs arguing with each other, it would be their own fault if they got hurt. However, one of the voices was clearly that of a girl and she sounded frightened. After hearing this, he couldn't just pretend that he had heard nothing. Gemini https://handofvecna.blogspot.com Hehe, you can't escape now. Now then, come with us quietly. The words spoken in the back alley could be recognized as cla.s.cyclo.cla.s.s dialogue no matter which world one might be in. Like what one could see anywhere, the men were dressed in a manner that clearly said, I'm a thug. They had unpleasant grinning faces as well as foul dirty clothes. With knives in their hands, these 5 men were Hara.s.sing a girl. If one were to cla.s.sify them, they would probably belong to the primate order, hominidae family, and thug genus. Such existences were not uncommon. One could find similar creatures in the back alleys of any large city. Strangely, their lines and actions were always the same. Because of their poor vocabulary, some people had proposed, actually, they are magical beasts, right? In the words of Ruppaz, they were simply monsters using humanoid graphics. You don't have to be afraid. Uncles like us are very kind. Yes, very gentlemanly too. A pervert named Gentleman, that is. The men surrounded the girl to block her escape routes, brandis.h.I+ng their knives in a manner that was contrary to their words. Where exactly would such behavior be considered gentlemanly? Compared to them, even the orcs would be considered gentlemen. The girl, who was being Hara.s. said, looked nervous, but she still held on to her well-used staff. The enemies consisted of 5 people, but each individual's ability wasn't that high. It was a considerable disadvantage for her to be cornered at such a close distance, but the girl judged that her level was still higher than theirs. In fact, the level difference was huge. The thugs were at most around level 10, while the girl already exceeded level 50. This difference ensured that she would not lose, unless the girl was a mage who was bad at melee combat. Actually, it was still possible to use a sword to deal with the situation. Although she was a mage, she had learned swordsman's.h.I+p from her mercenary father. Of course, she was far from being a professional swordsman, but it was not impossible to defeat these thugs in melee combat. However, the only weapon she had now was a handy, defensive staff. If she were to go out of the city, she would be fully equipped, but currently, she only had such unreliable weapons. First, target one person, with fireball to set him on fire, then, increase the distance while they're confused. If she could increase the distance, there would be no way she could lose. She hadn't stepped into many battlefields. Instead, she had spent most of her time reading and learning arcane magic in Svalin. In addition, there had been a recent incident where her self-confidence was completely crushed. Even so, she told herself that she wasn't so weak as to lose to these guys. However, when she was about to use magic, the staff suddenly vanished. Oops, that's dangerous. You mustn't use such a dangerous thing. The staff was in the hands of the man behind the thugs. What did he do? Super speed? Teleportation? I don't understand. I don't understand what just happened. The person who took the staff was a handsome man in high-quality clothes. He was clearly different from the thugs. He had blue eyes with wavy brown hair. It was evident from his graceful, well-featured face that he was an aristocrat. However, he couldn't hide the vulgar desire in his eyes. This caused the girl considerable discomfort. Don't make me take action. Do you know how sinful it is for commoners like you to waste my precious time and energy? Tools should behave like tools and work as I desire. How selfish! The girl was enraged by his selfishness, but the elegant man didn't seem to care. He was relaxed in a way that suggested he was confident that he would never lose. His smile was full of scorn. However, his expression became vexed upon hearing the voice of a third party. Hey, you people! What are you doing? Everyone turned their attention to SEI, who came after hearing the commotion. However, when they saw his figure, the 5 thugs laughed at him as if he was a fool. What? It's just a self-righteous brat. They thought so as they let their guard down. They set their prey aside and turned their knives towards SEI as they approached him carelessly. What's up, bro? Are you an ally of justice? Hey, you're so cool. Don't misunderstand. We're gentlemen, not villains. A pervert named Gentleman, that is. Seeing SEI's unreliable figure, the thugs completely underestimated him. However, SEI confronted them directly without any hint of fear. I don't know what the situation is, but don't you think you're immature for surrounding a girl like this? Huh? What's with this guy? Isn't he getting ahead of himself? This is bothersome. Let's just finish him off. One of the thugs reached out for SEI, but the latter calmly evaded it, caught the thug's arm, and threw him over. ub.a.s.t.a.r.d. You jerk, how dare you do that to Pila? They weren't expecting the youth to fight back. Now, the 4 remaining thugs attacked him simultaneously. But for the current SEI, they were too slow. After overcoming the battle at the demi-human village, he wouldn't be frightened of something like this. Without changing his expression, SEI struck them down one after another with either a knife hand strike or an elbow strike. All 5 of the thugs collapsed on the ground in an instant. And then, the elegant man, who was hanging back, applauded deliberately. Heh, you're pretty good. I guess you can't judge a book by its cover. The elegant man said this as if he found it interesting, while stomping on the face of a thug. Compared to him, you guys are useless. In the end, a piece of C.R.A.P is just C.R.A.P. Stomp. Stomp. Trample. To make me take action, personally. He stomped on the thug's face again and again, not caring if the latter's teeth were broken or his face was bleeding. You're really a useless tool. Hey, what are you doing? Aren't they your comrades? Comrades? Stop joking. They're just tools. Don't you throw away tools that can't be used? This is the same. The elegant man stepped on the thug's body and wiped the blood off his shoes with the thug's clothes. Then, He turned to SEI and smiled scornfully. Now then, it's ridiculous that I have to take action personally against a commoner like you. But it can't be helped since my tools are so useless. Let me show you what pain is like. It seemed the elegant man was becoming riled up. SEI quickly readied his stance, but he lost sight of the elegant man in the next moment. And then, there was an impact on his abdomen and he staggered. It hurts? I was attacked? When did that happen? He was taking damage even though he didn't look like he was being attacked. He was confused by this seemingly impossible event, but only momentarily. He had gained some courage after experiencing actual battles. Losing track of his thoughts during a battle was synonymous with death. Therefore, SEI cleared away the confusion and doubt in his mind and immediately looked for the elegant man. There was N.O. body in sight, but there was another shadow next to his own shadow at his feet. From behind, SEI turned around and kicked. This surprised the elegant man. Despite hurriedly jumping back to dodge, he still couldn't evade it completely and the kick had the tip of his nose. Although he had wanted to land gracefully, his expression changed after seeing red spots on the ground. The kick had caused his nose to bleed. Damn.Ned commoner, you dare do this to my face. The elegant man roughly wiped away the blood from his nose and then vanished again. Immediately after, SEI received an impact to his face. And then his shoulder, abdomen, and jaw started to ache. There was no mistake. He was under attack. He was being beaten even though he wasn't. He was being kicked even though he wasn't. Is this the telekinesis ability of the Esper CLA.S.S? Or is he simply that fast? He didn't know which was it. Perhaps, it was something completely different. Fortunately, his level and attack power were not too different from SEI's. SEI endured the pain and stopped moving to avoid falling over. He swung his fist at the elegant man who appeared at the edge of his vision, but he disappeared again and evaded the blow. Don't think you can get another lucky hit. You can never beat me because I have the power of an invincible hero. The elegant man laughed and folded his arms across his chest. Is he giving himself a handicap? SEI thought and quickly put his hand on the katana at his waist. That's enough, Debris-sama. The tense atmosphere was broken by a man's voice resonating from the darkness. A tall man in his 30s with a mustache appeared. After seeing him, SEI became more nervous than ever. He could tell that that man was strong, probably stronger than Jean, or even comparable to Gantz. This person is the hero recognized by the royal family of Leavition. There's no benefit in fighting here. Hero? Heh, that's him? As I thought, the royal family is useless. They're blind in regards to evaluating people. Be careful with your words. If someone related to the royal family hears of this, you could be charged with treason. The elegant man, Debris, frowned sullenly and then struck him without saying a single word as if he was throwing a tantrum. The other man seemed to have expected this as he neither moved nor say anything, even though he stumbled for a moment. Debris glared at SEI and warned him in a low voice. I'll remember your face. The price of being an ally of justice will be high. After saying this, both men left without looking back. After watching them leave, SEI sighed and released his tension. Then, he tried speaking to the girl who had been Hara.S. said, and he suddenly realized that her face looked familiar. You're Alfie. She was the female mage who was once a member of the party aiming to defeat the Demon King and the Overlord. But after seeing the battle between those monsters, she became disheartened and left before they started their journey. Image from Light Novel Volume 6. Author's notes. Debris-kun, the self-proclaimed hero, LOL, is not even as strong as SEI. Weak, I believe. Specs of the hero's party. There's nothing worth nothing this time. I'd like to release the specs of the hero and his companions who had been treated like normal people by Ruppas. They're not weak by any means, really, they're not weak. Minami Jyaji SEI arm strength, could barely lift 55 kilograms with a bench press, can now lift 550 kilograms leg strength, could run 100m in 14 seconds now, 7 seconds grip strength, 42 kilograms 210 kilograms sword attack power, can cut an iron plate with a thickness of 3 cm. Punch power, 50 kg 400 kg jumping power, vertical jump of 63 cm. 3M general comments, he's actually very strong now, having far Serpa.s. said the limits of an earthling. Gene arm strength, can lift 620 kg leg strength, can run 100 m in 8 seconds grip strength, 250 kg sword attack power, can cut an iron plate with a thickness of 3.5 cm. Punch power, 430 kg jumping power, 2.4 m general comments, he has sufficient combat power as an adventurer and could be scouted by a country for his strength. Gant's arm strength, can lift 700 kg leg strength, can run 100 m in 11 seconds grip strength, 350 kg sword attack power, can cut an iron plate with a thickness of 5 cm. Punch power, 650 kg jumping power, 1.2 m general comments, he's the strongest mercenary so far. It's no exaggeration to call him a superhuman. Female knight arm strength, same as a gorilla leg strength, same as a gorilla grip strength, same as a gorilla sword attack power, same as a gorilla punch power, same as a gorilla jumping power, same as a gorilla general comments, gorilla, gorilla, gorilla. Friedrich arm strength, can lift 900 kg leg strength, 65 km/h grip strength, 400 kg sword attack power, can cut an iron plate with a thickness of 3 m. Punch power, 850 kg jumping power, 5 m general comments, strong, I believe. Cruz arm strength, can lift 25 kg leg strength, can run 100 m in 20 seconds grip strength, about 20 kg sword attack power, doesn't have a sword in the first place. Punch power, about 10 kg? Jumping power, vertical jump of about 30 cm or so. General comments, weak, I believe. I'm a rear guard, okay? Kinko arm strength, can't lift with cat paws leg strength, 45 km/h grip strength, can't grip with cat paw sword attack power, swings like a cat. Punch power, can kill cat lovers with his cuteness. Jumping power, about 10 m general comments, cat. Bonus Mars arm strength, barely but can lift 1 ton, 1000 kg, leg strength, Mach 3, 3705 km/h, grip strength, 600 kg sword attack power, can leave a crack on the ground up to 50 m away. Punch power, 1.2 ton, 1200 kg, jumping power, 120 m general comments, his opponent matchup was just terrible. Ruppaz? It's going to be outrageous if serious calculations were made. I dare not try to calculate it. Chapter 123. The atmosphere was simply awkward. Alfie was a girl who was once chosen by the king to be one of the hero's companions, but she left because she became frightened. In other words, from SEI's perspective, she could be considered a deserter. Of course, SEI didn't think of her that way. Anyone who had seen that battle would understand that it was inevitable. However, he still couldn't casually say, "Hey, long time no see." Alfie was the same. After all, she couldn't help but feel guilty towards SEI. She was ashamed of fleeing after saying that she would fight together with him. But it was just too scary. When she thought about fighting such monsters, she wouldn't stop trembling. But it was only natural. That was a calamity after all. It was like being told to challenge an avalanche when an avalanche was actually happening, or fight a tsunami when a tsunami was rising, or defeat a meteor when a meteor was falling. It was simply impossible. It was completely beyond the limits of what a living creature could do. But Ruppaz and the Demon King could do that. They could blow away an avalanche with one punch, split a tsunami, or shatter a meteor. They were that kind of monsters. And so Alfie fled. She didn't want to die in a battle that she couldn't possibly win. She thought she could fight with her life on the line. She thought she could devote her life to the future of the world. However, when confronted with such a small chance of victory, she was reminded of the meaning of weakness. She realized painfully that her will wasn't strong enough to let her face a battle with zero chance of victory. Her reason told her not to challenge the Overlord and the Demon King, and that running away was the right thing to do. Her head told her that since they were like calamities, one should only think of reducing the amount of damage and casualties. However, the youth, who was weak at that time, was still continuing the journey, and she had seen his growth with her own eyes. Although he was still immature, he had grown to the point where he couldn't be compared to what he was before. And what about her? She ran away and had to be rescued. She felt that she was such a shameless person. How miserable. That, SEI thought that the conversation would not progress otherwise, so he spoke up. Alfie shuddered and looked at SEI. There was fear in her eyes. She was afraid of being blamed for running away. She was scared of being branded as a coward. It's been a while. You're doing well, right? Anyway, yeah. I didn't expect to meet you here. Yeah, that's right. I didn't think we would meet again. SEI carefully chose words that wouldn't hurt her. Alfie was relieved and replied stiffly. And anyway, let's leave here for the time being. This place isn't safe. That's right. Although both of them were stuttering, they understood what they had to do now. First, they needed to leave this alley. Otherwise, they wouldn't know if more thugs might show up. The creatures known as thugs would infinitely SPA.W.N in an unsafe place. SEI and Alfie rushed into the main street and entered a nearby restaurant where they could take their time to have a conversation. It was a stylish shop with a crab-shaped signboard which read, King Crab No. 4 Shop. Welcome to King Crab Lejarn Branch. A restaurant staff in a red vest greeted them and guided them to a table by the window. Anyway, why was it that the staff was wearing the same clothes as Karkanos from Ruppa's party? The two of them ordered some food and settled down to resume their conversation. Can I ask you? Why were those guys after you? Well, yes, it'd be better to tell you. If you know about it, it'd be easier to avoid getting involved. No matter how one looked at him, the man who was after Alfie was definitely not normal. He probably belonged to the wealthy CLA.S of aristocrats. He was a pretty arrogant guy. This was not unusual. After all, on Earth, medieval Europe was also dominated by N.O.Bless. History had shown that there had been quite a few oppressive N.O.Bless. In J.A.Pan, there had been incidents where people were cut down just for being into a samurai. The question was, why was Alfie being chased by such an individual? Well, I saw something that I wasn't supposed to see. In other words, they're trying to silence me. Something you shouldn't have seen. Have you heard of the annual martial arts tournament in this city? Yeah, I heard about it from Cruz-san. While they were talking, the restaurant staff came over and served Alfie the black tea she ordered. Fruit juice was placed in front of SEI and the staff left quickly. The winner of this year's martial arts tournament will be honored as the hero of the domain of the spear. Hero. Yes. It's a political scheme. If the hero that they produced is the one to defeat the Overlord and the Demon King, the local N.O.Bless would have greater influence and persuasive power over the royal family, even though it's impossible to win. While listening to Alfie, SEI imagined an armor-cladded hero bravely challenging Ruppas and the Demon King. In his mind, Ruppas smiled wickedly, while the 12 heavenly stars awaited her orders as they stood behind her in their true forms as giant monsters. No, it's impossible. He'd be killed in an instant. SEI thought as he drank his fruit juice. Herein lies the problem. The Lord, the Speth family seems to want the family's young master to become the hero. And that's him. Yes. Debris Speth, the eldest son of the Speth family. Alfie drank her tea and frowned grumpily. That guy is the worst. He's even poisoning the food and drink of his opponents in order to win. Poison. Yes, but it's not enough to kill. It's a light poison that induces drowsiness and stomach ache. Well, if you drink it, you won't be able to predict I.P.8 in the tournament. Poison. When he heard it, the first thing he thought of was Scorpius, one of Ruppa's subordinates. She didn't give him a good impression. The worst thing is, if that guy gets interested in a woman, he would pretend to be hurt in order to lure her over to heal him, and then he would kidnap her. My friend got involved and was kidnapped. I see. So you witnessed the event and they came after you. Yes, I wanted to help her right away, but I was alone. Furthermore, that guy has an unknown ability, so the situation is quite bad. An unknown ability, that must be it. The unidentified skill was also used on SEI. He had moved instantaneously, attacked SEI without the latter noticing, and seized Alfie's staff. Unless the truth about that skill was known, SEI didn't think that he could win. A flea was about to say something, but she held back. Please help me. That was what she really wanted to say. However, she had abandoned SEI and ran away from the journey, so she couldn't bring herself to say it. Even so, she still wanted to help her friend. Although it was shameful to do so, she thought she should ask for help. But she knew that it was unreasonable, so she couldn't say it. But, for me to be talking like this, am I not expecting to receive help somewhere in my heart? He might help me if I talk to him, ain't I just being shallow and calculating? How shameless. Alfie despised herself and bit her lips. It's a little comforting to talk to you. Thank you. Alfie decided to leave before she could make any unreasonable request. After all, she abandoned them and ran away in fear. What happened in the past was a fact that would never change. Even so, she wanted them to help her when she was in danger. How could she possibly make such a convenient request? I can't say it. I won't say it. Therefore, it's enough. There's no need to involve him any further. Furthermore, they have a mission. There's no need for them to be involved in a conflict between fellow humans. I'll settle the bill. Take your time to enjoy the food. The food hasn't even come yet though. Alfie looked around. It seemed that she had ordered an apple pie out of habit. It's a thank you gift for your help. You can eat it. Please spare me from being treated by a girl. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? That's, SEI looked straight at Alfie and said forcefully. I can't simply ignore it after hearing so much. I'll help. These were words that she hoped and also dreaded to hear. She wanted someone to help her, but the more straightforward he was about it, the more cowardly and filthy she felt. The time she spent with him was short, so she didn't really know him well. But even so, when he was summoned from another world, she already understood a bit about him. Fundamentally, he was a good person. Then, first, my comrades, wait. It was right for SEI to gather manpower. After all, the opponent was AN.O.Blee, so naturally he would have a lot of backing. It was too reckless to challenge him with just the two of them. However, for Alfie, SEI's comrades were people that she had abandoned. If all of them came here, it would be like sitting on a needle mat for her. It would not be a comfortable place to be. Fortunately, SEI wasn't insensitive to such an extent. He understood Alfie's worries. It's fine. We had new faces joining us since then. This would make it a bit easier, right? In that case, well, now then, please wait a bit. I'll call them over now, SEI said that and stood up. He didn't forget to pay for the food either. He didn't know how it was in this world, but back in J.A.Pan where he grew up, it was a shame for a man to let the woman pay. https://handofvecna.blogspot.com and then, 10 minutes later. In front of Alfie, there were several members who weren't in the party during her time. SEI, you're too kind. Well, I don't like that B.A.S.T.A.R.D.N.O.Blee, so I'll help. The first was the adventurer, Gene. He wasn't a member when the party first departed. He was a talented man who was brought in later by the king. Therefore, he wasn't familiar with Alfie. Meanwhile, Alfie was wondering why SEI would bring a thug along. Well, it wasn't really a problem. Abusing his authority to do evil. Inexcusable. Let my sword deliver his judgment. The next person was the cat beastkin, Kinko. Looking at his small body stretching to strike an imposing pose, Alfie desperately resisted the urge to stroke him. This is super cute. I want to stroke him. Cats were dangerous creatures that could charm their opponents just by being there. I don't know much about human cities, but if you seek my A.S.Sistans, I'll respond with righteousness. Don't worry. I'll win no matter how many weak human soldiers there are. The third person was obviously bad news. Hiding his entire body under a hooded cloak, he was suspicious no matter how one looked at him. In addition, one could occasionally see the legs of a bug from under the cloak. Based on his words, it was apparent that he wasn't a human. Alfie was starting to worry about what exactly SEI brought along. We've heard the story. Let's do our best. The fourth person was a white-winged flugel girl. She looked adorable, but her wings were so white that Alfie was somewhat concerned. Alfie was certain that pure white wings were proof royalty, so was it really okay to involve her? She hoped that this was just a white-winged girl who was unrelated to royalty. Woof. A dog was wagging its tail next to SEI's legs. Is this really considered a combat power? However, in the current situation, it was considered barely acceptable. Honestly, this didn't seem like a hero's party, but she thought that they still must have met the requirements somehow. Sure enough, these were all people who weren't there back then. It was her first time meeting these people, so she didn't feel uncomfortable, except for one person. Hey, Alfie. Dad is here to help. The last person was Gantz. He was a muscular elite mercenary with a skinhead. Of course, Alfie knew of his fame and strength. She knew she could count on him. That's right. He's my father after all. Alfie shuddered and stared at SEI. Why did this guy bring my dad over? Chapter 124. Debris was entangled by a Death Flag author, Firehead, translator, Hand of Vecna editors, 2 more free thoughts, TPSTT, key on that day. A lot of enthusiastic people were gathered at the martial arts tournament. A round ring was at the center of the location. 2 predict.I.P. Ants were crossing swords and causing sparks to fly in the ring. However, the battle was one-sided as a brown-haired handsome man was overwhelming a warrior in heavy armor. Eventually, the warrior fell to his knees and groaned grudgingly. Dam.Nit, you coward, what are you talking about? I really wish you didn't blame me for your lack of skills. How shameless. You poisoned me. Well, I don't know anything about that. Maybe a subordinate who was concerned about me did it, but that has nothing to do with me, right? Their conversation was drowned out by the crowd, so N.O.Body heard it. It merely looked like the loser was ranting. Well, even if it's exactly as you said, you are just a lowly commoner, while I'm an outstanding N.O.Blee. Between us, who is more suitable to bear the T.I.Tle of a hero? Even a child could understand that. The spectators don't want your victory. They have come to see me defeat you elegantly and make you crouch before me. You. The warrior swung his fist, but failed to hit him. After drinking the water in the waiting room, he couldn't exert even half of his full power. Debris laughed at him and swung his sword. The warrior shouted in pain as his forearm fell off. However, N.O.Body blamed him. Since this was a serious match with real weapons, it wasn't against the rules to kill the opponent, although a victory without killing was preferred. Death and injury were considered an accident during the tournament. Arg. Sir, the warrior tried to surrender, but Debris skewered his throat with his sword to prevent him from doing so. Naturally, attacking a surrendered opponent was a foul, but this was effective only if the referee heard the cry to surrender. The referee did not hear it, even though it must have reached his ears. The voice that tried to surrender must have reached his brain through his eardrums. However, he did not hear it. He refused to hear it. If he judged it as a foul and earned the enmity of the Speth family, he would lose out in the end. Therefore, he decided to resolve the matter of the warrior's death as a result of him choosing not to surrender. That's the end. The winner is Debris. At the referee's declaration, Debris raised both hands to appeal to the crowd, agitating the spectators. This was his trick. Before the match, he would poison the drinks of his opponent, bribe the referee, and then win the fixed match. If he didn't like the opponents, he would ignore any attempts they made to surrender and simply kill them. If the opponent was a woman who could become his toy, he would kidnap her under the guise of administering treatment, making himself out to be a gentleman in the eyes of the spectators. Speaking of which, the toy he had acquired previously was quite interesting. She was certainly a female knight, and since she had a pretty face, she was worth the effort to beat her up. While he was playing with her, she was calling out the name of some guy. What kind of reaction would he make if he were to see the woman in her current state? Commoners were just something for him to look down upon, but they did have one value, serving as toys for his entertainment. But toys would eventually break if they were played with too much. It was about time to throw that woman away. Recently, she had stopped showing any reactions. That was why he had designated her friend, a mage called Alfie, as his new toy. However, she turned out to be an outrageous ingrate who, let alone thinking of it as an honor, rudely ran away. And then there was that SEI or something, who got in his way. Debris didn't like how he was proclaimed as the hero simply because he was appointed by the king. A commoner shouldn't oppose or object to me. All of you are my toys. Your existences have no other purpose. Therefore, I'm going to break all of you. He would destroy everything the hero thought was important. For now, he would start with his companions. By now, Debris subordinates should be heading towards the inn that they were staying in when they arrived in the city. It was about time they were under attack. There were many beautiful women among them, so it would be nice to capture them and make them into his new toys. He didn't notice it. He hadn't noticed it yet. The beautiful woman was a walking calamity. Gemini https://handofvecna.blogspot.com. There were many inns in Lejarn. There were many mercenaries, adventurers, and swordsmen who came to the city to test their skills, so it was inevitable that there was more demand for such facilities. If one were to ask what the best inn in the city was, people who were familiar with the city would all reply, Raton's Inn. This inn was originally started by a young man that one could find anywhere. He opened the inn in order to have the opportunity to meet his love interest. His love interest came from a family of knights, so they practically lived in different worlds. However, the young man pined for her and loved her so much that he opened the inn in an attempt to woo her even if it wouldn't work. Eventually, the inn gained a reputation for the innkeeper's cooking skills. At first, the knightly girl merely thought, I should at least visit and try it out once. Thereafter, it became a place she frequently visited. The innkeeper further improved his cooking skills in an attempt to please her. And so they came to meet each other many times and the inn became a place where she belonged. Before she realized it, they were mutually attracted to each other and they eventually became lovers. So said Dina, who was babbling on about the romance story during lunchtime, even though the innkeeper was nearby. Hey, stop it, you idiot. Even if it has become a well-known story, it's a kindness to keep quiet about it. I bit into my bread and looked at Dina disapprovingly, but she didn't seem to care. They're so cyanide, she said such an insensitive thing and continued to tell the tale. Why were women so interested in the love stories of others? I honestly couldn't understand it. Hearing the love stories of others set a fire in my belly. They should just explode. However, the innkeeper, who was the subject of the story, had a dark expression and didn't react to Dina's rumors. Did something bad happen? Or was he dumped? While thinking that, I drank the soup. Sweet? The soup was sweet? Hey, innkeeper. Did you mix up salt with sugar for this soup? My apologies. I'll replace it for you. Mistaking sugar for salt was so cliché that even light novels had stopped using it recently. I was worried that there was something wrong with my sense of taste. I had heard that the selling point of this inn was its delicious food, but honestly, it was rather disappointing. Every dish was somewhat lacking. Perhaps I should say, his heart wasn't in it? It wasn't actually bad, but it felt like he was cutting corners or messing up the taste because he was distracted. People often said, cooking comes from the heart. It seemed that this was true. It wasn't that a heart and love would really become seasonings and deepen the taste of the food. However, cooking depended on accurate calculations and tedious work. In other words, it was necessary to expend a lot of time and concentration to make a delicious dish. This was especially true here since it was not J.A.Pan. One couldn't put the ingredients in the pot and just wait for 3 minutes to get a delicious dish. There was nothing so convenient here. In other words, cooking without putting one's heart in it would only skimp on time and effort, so the taste naturally went down a grade. It seemed that the innkeeper was thinking of something else while he was cooking today. Well, I wasn't that familiar with cooking anyway, so maybe it was just my imagination. At least I wasn't like those food judges in manga who could take one bite and conclude, this dish is full of thoughtfulness and love. Seriously. I simply didn't have such a convenient tongue. While I was thinking of this, the innkeeper cautiously talked to us. I'd like to ask a question. Are you adventurers? Adventurers? We are indeed adventurers. If I was asked whether I was an adventurer or not, I was certain that I was one. When I first arrived in this world, I had registered and received requests as an adventurer. I took on a simple request to make some money for my trip. Since then, I hadn't done anything as an adventurer, so I was becoming a NEET. Anyway, let's hear what he had to say. Innkeeper, is there something troubling you? Yes. That's right. It must have been trouble if he wanted to rely on adventurers. It was also easy to guess from the heavy atmosphere. If he merely lacked ingredients or needed to procure some monster meat, the atmosphere wouldn't feel so tragic. Can you accept a request? As for the reward, I can pay 500,000 arrow. That's too much. It depends on the job, but even 10% of that would be sufficient for an adventurer's request. No, it is necessary to give this much. This is because, in the worst-case scenario, you could be going up against an.o.bli. The innkeeper's words stopped my hand which was holding a spoon. I see. An.o.bli, huh? Once again, I had a bad feeling about this. Well, I should at least listen to his story, after clearing away all the boorish disturbances. Libra. Yes. I called out to Libra who was standing behind me. She responded instantly as if she had been waiting for instructions. The innkeeper didn't seem to know, but the inn had already been surrounded. It would be too much of an 8th grader syndrome to call it a murderous intent, but it was definitely directed at us. In game terms, it would be the feeling that we had become targets. Somehow, I just knew it. The presences that were surrounding the inn, there were 12 people. Libra could deal with them alone. But if it was simply left to her, she would simply kill everyone, so it was necessary to be more specific about her order. I wanted to know why they were aiming for us. Capture everyone and extract information from them. Understood. How would you like me to do it? Just do it as you normally would. I understand the mission. Moving ahead with its execution. At the same time as I gave the order, Libra went outside casually. Immediately after, men started screaming outside. There were screams, followed by even more screams. I didn't know who they were, but let's leave sympathy aside for now. Eventually, the screaming stopped. When the door opened again, Libra entered without a single drop of blood on her. She was dragging along 12 men who had been tied up. Without exception, all of their arms and legs were bent in the opposite direction. Their mouths were gagged and they were blindfolded. They had been completely neutralized. Capture completed. Moving on to interrogation. May I borrow agacaros? Yes. Wait a moment, Libra. If it's interrogation, wouldn't it be more effective to use this mistress poison? No. We can extract the information without your help. Tisk, and so Libra and agacaros went upstairs. Along the way, the men were bumping into the stairs. Was this really okay? Whatever it was, they'd better not dirty the room. I'd be staying there overnight after all. Sagittarius. Yes. After Libra extracts the information, find the person who sent them. Understood. I gave the order to Sagittarius while breaking my bread and dipping it in my soup. Immediately after, the screams of the men resonated from the room we had rented. It was as if it was the end of the world. What in the world were they doing? I didn't really want to think about it. Well, I didn't know who it was, but since he had acted in a hostile manner, there would be no need for me to be merciful. If the other party wished to stir up trouble, then so be it. It would be too troublesome to leave an unresolved problem, so I might as well just crush it completely. I could only say that the timing was bad. If it was when I had just arrived in this world, I wouldn't be so cold. I would have been more gentle. There might be other ways to resolve this matter, but, too bad. I wasn't so gentle anymore. Image from Light Novel Volume 1, for Web Novel Chapter 9. Author's notes: even though Ruppaz wasn't moving this time, Debris, why? Death flag, oh, what a handsome guy. Let me entangle him. Debris. Translator's notes: hearing the love stories of others set a fire in my belly. Hand of Vecna, the author makes the character seem so petty. TPSTT, it's the same old J.A. Paints BS, to be honest. I don't understand those scenes in anime/manga where the main character gets a girl, or a girl talks to a guy, and every other guy stares daggers at him. Is that actually a thing? It's so dumb. Key, yeah, some people get really upset about being single/other people getting girls. Conclusion, it's stupid and childish. I hope they had removed it from the light novel version. Also, personally, I never really get all these food-related anime. Everything is delicious. Everyone reacts in the same exaggerated way to the food, like they're having an orgasm. When everyone constantly overreacts, it just gets annoying. It's the same thing with those male protagonists that get fluid U.S. teared over every little thing involving a female character. When I see that in a manga or anime, I usually drop the series soon after. Chapter 125. The Death Flag unfurled to its maximum. Author, Firehead, translator, Hand of Vecna, editors. 2 more free thoughts. TPSTT, key behind the scenes of this glamorous tournament. SEI and his companions were stealthily investigating the waiting rooms for the Prodict.I.P. ants, which had been prepared by the Speth family. If Alfie's words were to be believed, Debris had kidnapped several Prodict.I.P. ants. However, if they were to directly accuse him, it would just be a one-sided accusation and they would become criminals. Furthermore, the other party was AN.O.Bli, who governed the domain of the spear, so they couldn't just recklessly accuse him. Although SEI was the hero chosen by the king, reckless behavior on his part could lead to a loss of trust in the king. If that were to happen, the ambitious Debris would surely take advantage of the mistake to make the kingdom owe him one. If there were no such restrictions and he was a monster like Ruppaz who could annihilate all of the humanoids, not merely the N.O.Bli, he could just forcefully take action without leaving any room for negotiation. However, this was impossible for SEI and his group. Therefore, they needed to find the evidence first, then act in the name of righteousness. By now, SEI did not doubt that the Speth family was involved in some sort of wrongdoing. After all, he had personally seen Alfie being hunted down. He had also seen Debris' cruel mistreatment of the hired thugs when they turned out to be useless. Emotional evaluations aside, from an objective third-person perspective, this wasn't enough to make the Speth family anything more than a suspect. That was why they had to find evidence first, but... Did you find anything? No, there's nothing here. SEI shook his head in response to Gant's question. They had checked the waiting rooms used by the Prodict.I.P. ants who were suspected of being kidnapped, but they found no evidence. It seemed that the scene had been carefully cleaned up. It would have been good to at least find some evidence of the poisoned food and drinks, but things weren't going so well. By the way, Alfie, how did you know that the Prodict.I.P. ants were poisoned? I'm not doubting you, but if the poison could be visually identified, I actually drank it myself. I said I drank it too. Alfie looked away and answered SEI's question. Before the match, Rael, that's my friend's name. She called me to the waiting room. And I took some of the black tea that was prepared for her. As I mentioned before, the poison just makes you a bit drowsy and unable to exert your strength. After 10 minutes or so, you'd be able to move normally again. But by then, Rael had lost the match. I rushed to look for her and found him trying to take her somewhere. And so I was hunted down for the sake of being silenced. I see. Apparently, Alfie had a rather careless personality. No, would anyone even question if a drink offered by a friend had been poisoned? In fact, even the friend who offered the drink didn't think it was poisoned, so it would have been hard to find it suspicious in this situation. Hey, Kinko-san. Can you find any clues with your sense of smell? Don't be absurd. That's the specialty of a dog beastkin. I'm a cat. It's impossible. Oh, it's impossible, huh? After searching another waiting room, Jean and Kainko couldn't find any clues, so they regrouped with SEI and the others. If Kainko was a dog beastkin, he might have been able to find some clues, but since he was a cat, he couldn't. There weren't any clues, everyone was discouraged at the results. While they were thinking about what to do next, something moved. It was the stupid dog that always stayed close to SEI's feet. It suddenly started running as if it noticed something and went to the back of the hallway. Hey, where are you going? SEI quickly chased after it and eventually found the dog barking loudly at a wall after turning around a corner. Why is this dog barking at the wall? When SEI touched the wall, there didn't seem to be any changes. It was just an ordinary wall. Gantz and the others came soon after. Jean was the first to notice something. I see. Move aside, SEI. This is probably that sort of thing. After saying that, Jean knocked repeatedly on various parts of the wall and listened to the differences in sound. As an adventurer, he had experience exploring ruins, so he could notice subtle differences in sound. There were often hidden doors in ruins, so being able to find them was an indispensable talent for first-rate adventurers. Jean examined the wall for a while and then noticed a small hole at the base of the wall. It was a small hole that wouldn't normally be noticed unless someone was looking intently for it. Bingo! He took a wire-like object out of his pocket and inserted it into the hole. After messing around with it for tens of seconds, there was a clicking sound and Jean returned the wire into his pocket. He then put his hands on the wall and moved it sideways, and the wall slowly slid to expose a hidden passage. Impressive. I'm a former well-known adventurer, you know. I could finish something like that before breakfast. Jean took the lead, followed by SEI and the others. Gantz followed in the rear. The victims were probably just ahead and debris subordinates should be waiting there as well. After going down the stairs, Jean stopped at the corner. He used his hand to signal SEI and the others to be quiet while he carefully looked around the corner. As expected, there were some armed guards waiting there. Naturally, it was possible to break through forcefully. However, it would be a problem if they had difficulty defeating even one of them and the guards ended up calling for reinforcements. The situation would become unpleasant. The members of SEI's party were not weak. Since the party included Gantz, the strongest mercenary, and Sarges, the executive of the demi-humans, they actually had considerable combat power. However, if the number of enemies reached 100 or 200, they might be overwhelmed by numbers alone. Moreover, this was the enemy's territory. They didn't know what kind of traps had been installed. Leave it to me. Sarges spoke confidently and quickly jumped out of the shadows to run across the wall. All of this happened in an instant, so even the soldiers didn't notice him. Sarges moved along the ceiling and by the time they thought he had jumped down, several soldiers had already fallen. What? An enemy attack. The soldiers quickly became alert, but Sarges was nowhere to be seen. In the next moment, Sarges jumped again, took out another soldier, landed on the wall, and left. His movements were those of a hunter. The enemies didn't even know what was happening. Their numbers were reduced one by one. Within 10 seconds or so, there wasn't a single soldier left who was still conscious. Having finished hunting, Sarges returned to SEI and the others. Okay, let's go. Yeah. That's not half bad, Spider Uncle. SEI and Jean were impressed and surprised by the ability of Sarges who went ahead. It was scary when he was an enemy, but he seemed so reliable now that he was an ally. It was a little late to say this, but it was a wonder how they managed to win against him. Honestly speaking though, it was doubtful whether their victory was really the result of their own efforts. What's this? Since a while ago, there's the smell of blood. I have a bad feeling about this. Let's proceed carefully. After progressing for a while, SEI frowned at an unpleasant smell. Kainko was also wary of the smell and the group slowly advanced. And then, what they saw was a nauseating scene. Women. Everywhere, there were women who had been broken and thrown away. There was a groaning woman hanging from the ceiling. Another woman was stuck to the wall and her body was impaled by darts. One woman, who was hanging off of the bed, murmured an unintelligible whisper. Another woman had collapsed in the back and her face had been burned beyond recognition. Virgo covered her mouth upon seeing the scene. The others expressed disgust. How terrible, what is this? Tisk, so this is how the N.O.Bli-sama plays around? To think that he actually claims to be an outstanding N.O.Bli. SEI desperately held back his nausea, while Jean threw up without hiding his disgust. Gantz didn't say anything, but his face was seething with rage. Kinko's fists were shaking. Rail, where are you? Alfie lost her cool at the sight and shouted as she searched for her friend. However, she didn't seem to be within sight. No. Alfie just didn't realize that she was within sight. That voice, is that Alfie? Rail. The voice belonged to the woman who had collapsed in the back. Alfie ran over to hug the woman whose face was burned beyond recognition. Oh, how did this happen? Her once beautiful face was dyed black and red. Her hair was almost completely burned away. Tears poured forth from Alfie's eyes as she embraced her friend who had changed. Why, oh, I hope you don't get the wrong idea. I didn't do it. That stupid woman did it to herself. As if to answer Alfie's question, a voice came from behind SEI and the others. When everyone turned their heads to look, there was a N.O.Bli man with his subordinates. Debris Spath was standing there with a grin. Since she had a somewhat pretty face, I took great pains to play with her. But that fool burned her own face instead. Thanks to that, I have lost interest in her. She's just a female knight, did she think that she was protecting her honor by doing that? I really don't understand. Well, she can be thrown away now since she isn't worth embracing anymore. But that won't help with my displeasure. I don't like to cry myself to sleep. If you cause me displeasure, you have to pay the price for it. UB.A.S.T.A.R.D. Jean raised a wrathful voice at Debris' selfishness and took the first step forward. As a man, he couldn't forgive this guy. He would make him suffer as the woman did, no, he would make him suffer even more and crush his smug face. But in the next moment, Jean felt a sharp pain in his abdomen and fell to his knees. Gah, ugh. Don't approach me so casually, you mere adventurer. You and I have different worth. Know your place. What did he do? What just happened? Never mind Jean who was attacked. Even SEI and the others who were watching couldn't understand what had happened. The same was true even for Sarges who had the highest status in the heroes' party. He couldn't hide his surprise. Could it be that you think you can challenge me? Don't be so conceited. I'm different from all of you. I'm the chosen one. You people can't even touch me. As he said that, Debris raised his hand before his face to show off his ring. Stop messing around. I'll never forgive you. Alfie suddenly stretched out her hand and shot a flaming missile. But the flame didn't hit Debris. Instead, one of his subordinates behind him was struck and burned. Debris himself was already behind Alfie and raised his fist. Such a bad girl. Shooting magic at me, what would you do if you actually hit me? As he said this, he lashed out with his fist, but it was intercepted by Sarges. The latter immediately moved to counterattack, but Debris had disappeared once more. No, he didn't just disappear. The robe concealing Sarge's body was cut and he felt the pain of being struck with a blade. Sarge's resistant body didn't suffer a serious wound, but that wasn't the problem. Debris had slashed Sarge's before he could even register it. That was the problem. What is this hardness? The blade couldn't penetrate. Such a strange technique. It's not just being fast. It felt like all of his actions were finished in an instant before I could register them. You realize it? Debris laughed as if he was impressed by Sarges. He then showed his ring. Congratulations. I'll tell you since you can't do anything about it anyway. I can stop the time of this world. Stop time? Stop lying. That's impossible unless you're the G.O.Dis-sama. That's true. But what if the G.O.Dis-sama gave me this power? Debris smiled and looked down on everyone. He then began to brag about it. Perhaps, he had wished to brag to someone since the beginning. A man with such strong pride and vanity usually had the urge to talk to someone about the special things he had. Behold the Ring of Time, a divine artifact given to the Sword King Alioth by the G.O.Dis Sama in order to defeat the Black-Winged Overlord. Alioth left it with one of his friends and the latter's descendants continued to inherit it. I'm impossible, something like that, That's a nice expression. Your expression shows that you now know the absolute difference between us. That's the expression of someone who understands that he can't win no matter how much he struggles. When it is dyed with anger and despair at the unreasonable situation, it is my favorite expression. It's simply irresistible. Debris smiled and drew the sword from his waist. On the other hand, Sei and the others went on full alert, but would it be meaningful at all? If the opponent stopped time and then moved to attack, there would be no point in defense or evasion. Debris disappeared and blood spurted from Sei's leg. There was nothing they could do to counterattack when faced with a cheat like stopping time. And so the one-sided battle began.